I would like to go a little bit into your background. Could you please tell me why you do what you do?
I love the jungle and I believe and trust in the teachings of the jungle that I have received, and the same for the indigenous way and the indigenous knowledge. I have deep gratitude inside myself for everything I have experienced in the jungle, and I would like to give back to Pachamama, to Mother Earth, in a sustainable way for what I have received, the healing I have received, and the way my life has changed. And so there was one journey, I think it was 3 years ago. I was traveling through the rainforest and I was praying to the jungle that I am surrendering to her teachings, and wherever she's going to take me in life, I'm going to follow. So I committed to a specific flow, and I'm in a specific flow. The life I'm living now, it was never planned. I never made a schedule for this. There was an inner and outer revolution happening in my life, and I'm going with a flow, and I do love to share what I believe in.
Wait, what is the background that it came to the point that you went to the jungle, and what's the big picture of this situation being an inner and outer revolution?
So it was 2013 that I was going into the jungle for the first time for a couple of months. And the reason was to find a cure for my breast cancer, to make it very short and simple. I was diagnosed 10 years for the first time, and I was going through some hospital treatments and a lot of hospital analysis and conversations with doctors in the field. And I was just not satisfied with their approach. And on the other hand, my health state got much worse during the time of hospital treatment.
May I
And
ask, sorry, how old
yeah,
were you when you got diagnosed with breast cancer?
10 years ago, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, 22. So I just felt like not fully seen, and I was very disturbed by the energy in the hospitals and by the treatments and the whole way. At that time, I was in a relationship and we had a dog together, and our dog got sick with breast cancer. So what happened is that the conventional doctor said your dog gonna die within a week, needs operation and stuff like this. But we, through some circumstances, we found out about a naturopathic veterinary doctor for our dog. So she made a natural remedy out of very simple ingredients for our dog, and within a week everything was fine again. So I started connecting with this woman who also had a background with breast cancer. That's why she changed her life. That put me on the path. At that time, I was still living in Berlin, to work with alternative natural medicines that were available in Europe. Different categories, changing my food diet. Things didn't get better, but they didn't get worse either. And then through another circumstance, a dear friend of mine, he told me about plants in the Amazon rainforest that are cytotoxic, that can kill cancer cells. And from there, I was researching, and I was having dreams about meeting the healer that I later met in the jungle. I had dreams 8 months before I went to the jungle of that healer. I was never in the jungle, I never met him. But when I arrived there, eventually 8 months later, it was all like in my dreams that I had. So being the first time in the jungle, 2013, coming from the context of living in a Western city, that was changing everything. Yeah.
Okay. And so, Would you like to elaborate on your experience in the jungle, the first time you went to the jungle? What did happen? What did it change? What was the
Sure.
effect?
Yeah, so just living in the thick lowland jungle is an experience in itself, because you can really feel the force of our planet and Mother Earth. And just to live in the jungle and to be surrounded by so much life and so much vibration, so much biodiversity when it comes to plant life and insects and reptiles. It was just mind-blowing. I was never in an environment like this before, and I don't think there's another environment like that on the planet that is so thick and dense with life. And just solely to be out of all my previous contexts, like there was no like civilization chatter, so to say, like no phone ringing, no internet, no distractions, just me in that nature. So to have the time to observe that nature was a teaching in itself, because finally I understood what photosynthesis meant. I never understood it in school. I was like, I'm in biology. I was like, what is she talking about, my teacher, But later on now in the jungle, what I have experienced, and now I understand it, of course, and understanding what life and death means by observing one thing eats the other thing, and it's about survival. It's about pure survival. And to live in the jungle while the thunder is happening and the trees around your hut are falling down into the ground and might even hit your heart, gives you another perspective of the human being in its context on that planet, because we as a species are quite new to the jungle. Maybe 20,000 years ago, or 25,000 years ago, or 30,000 years ago, the human species was introduced to the jungle environment. But the jungle as it is exists for millions and millions and millions of years. So I was connecting to that force of everything. And then on the other hand, what happened is I started to drink for the first time sacred ancient medicines, and that was absolutely changing everything too. That realm and that healing I received, the understanding to be able to face specific things, all that realm in itself was just a very new thing. And then of course, when I went back to Berlin after this, it was impossible to continue life as I had it before, after you have an experience like this. And I was fully immersing myself into the jungle, and I was bringing time, and it was everything. I was like scared, I had fear, I was happy, I was enchanted, I felt liberated, all kinds of emotions. Because for me, the reason to do this journey, the first journey, was to heal my illness, for the purpose to live long and happy, right? It's a question about life and death here, why I did that. So I was fully going into it, and it was ripping me apart and putting me together in a new way. And then of course everything was new, and then everything changed.
Okay. So, what does it actually mean you went to the jungle? You were, I mean, how can we imagine that? You were alone? And how, I mean, what does it mean in fact? You arrive in Cusco or wherever, and then you take a tour, or you take a guide, or you get connected to people who take you there, and then there, what did you do? Where did you stay? How did this, all these practical things in the way? How can we imagine
Yeah.
that? I mean, I guess you didn't just live in the jungle under the tree on your own. You found a spot and
No.
then, you know.
I mean, you can try, right? There's a lot of space. But how did it start? Well, I had dreams about this healer. As I said, I was still in Berlin. I was doing some internet research. I found a name on a forum that was discussing visiting healers in the Amazon rainforest from people who have been there before. I resonated with one name. I don't have any idea. I didn't have any idea about all of this. I didn't even speak Spanish at that time. So zero language skills. This healer, he has a website. He has a small place in the jungle, like a healing center, he's calling it, where he welcomes people who want to work with him. Because originally he's from deeper inside the jungle, but he lives with his family in the city of Iquitos, which is a jungle city in Peru. So I use the translator system to contact him in an email, and I think at that time he had someone helping him with this digital stuff, because in the jungle there's no internet, so they were sending me an answer, and he just said, "You are welcome." He told me that the day I would arrive at the airport, I need to give him my flight details. There would be a driver picking me up, so I booked my flight. I gave him my details. I arrived in Iquitos airport, and then a driver who's a friend of mine now, he picked me up and he dropped me at a random spot on the road, kilometer 48 outside of Iquitos, next to a small village. And there was this indigenous boy sitting who was waiting for me, that I couldn't speak to because I didn't know the language. And he took my stuff, he helped me carry my things, and he was walking into the jungle from there. So, and that was it. And I had to follow him. And the night before it was raining a lot. I was not prepared for this jungle hike. So I was arriving, with like white sneakers after a 40-hour airplane trip from Europe. And we had to wade through the water because the bridge was over flooded. And on my left, like rotten pineapples in the water, one snake I was seeing. I was totally overwhelmed. The hike took like 1.5 hours because it was difficult to walk there because of the rain. And I couldn't even like follow him that fast as he was walking. And I had to carry my stuff over my head. And I nearly slipped walking through the water. The water was up to here. But there was an old woman coming my way from the other side carrying like rice on her head, and she had this wooden stick. So she gave me the wooden stick and I could easily walk to the other side, and then I turned around, but she was gone already. And I never understood, was she real or was she just a helping spirit? So I arrived in that little clearing in the jungle with some huts there. There's a temple, there are some huts for people to live, and there's a kitchen, and there's an access to the river. And so the boy, he dropped my things at one hut, and then I think later that day or next day, the healer arrived. Still, I couldn't talk the language, but somehow we communicated. And yeah, that was my house, that was my home for that while. And I started learning the language in that time, of course, because there was no other choice. And we started working together. In general, when I do these trips, one thing leads to another. Now it's a bit more complex what I'm doing with visiting the tribes in Brazil, but I do it mostly alone, all of these journeys, yeah.
Okay, so basically now you visit different tribes, how can I imagine, you find out, you hear, you talk to other people who visit the tribes, and then you try to go there. How can we imagine that? How does this work?
So the first time that I went to Brazil some years ago to visit the tribes, my intention was that I want to work with the tribes and go deeper in the tribal tradition with the medicines. And then how I ended up where I ended up in the first place was a quite interesting meant to be situation again, like the one I described with the healer who I was dreaming about in my dream 8 months before I even arrived, and then everything was falling into place. So I put out the intention that I want to visit the tribes in Brazil. And then one thing again was leading to the other. I'm going to spare you the story because it's quite a long one again. But it was like one thing happened and then the other thing happened, things you would never expect. And then for Brazil, it's important to contact the FUNAI, which is a government organization which takes care of the indigenous people's rights and land rights. So if you want to visit a tribe, it's good to meet them first. So they know you're in the area and they can assist you in your journey. So I did this. I contacted the FUNAI and they helped me out a lot. They connected me to one tribe that then I connected to very deeply. And they arranged the communication for me. But I had to go get there myself. And also then at that time when I went to Brazil, I didn't speak one word Portuguese. So I was starting from scratch again. But staying with that first tribe, the Puyanawa people that are very dear to me, I met other tribe people there and they were inviting me to their villages. So one thing was leading to the other, and then I'm arranging my travels alone with, like a boat, buying gasoline and then going there. So this is usually how I'm doing.
Okay. And I mean, we refer in the West to the jungle to be the wildest place and that you have to survive. It's, you survive or the other survives, survival of the fittest and so on. Is it that dangerous? And especially as a woman? I mean, how can I imagine is I would think it's really dangerous. In general, the jungle, and then also traveling alone as a woman, going to different tribes. Isn't there certain problems, aggression, rape, xenophobia? Maybe you talked in the beginning of that the coronavirus is for them is the disease of the white people. Is it something that you really have to be dedicated to, or is it fairly easy to do this type of trips? It sounds really a bit, dangerous what you describe, or complicated at least.
I mean, you don't do this stuff if you don't want to do it. You got to be committed to doing that. So of course my story is a bit different because I do it alone all the time, and so maybe I'm supposed to do that and this is my calling. But I never had problems ever in all these years. Not one problem. I was never robbed. I was never raped. And the thing with the lowland jungle in itself is it's dangerous. There are spiders that are dangerous. There are snakes. There's jaguars. There's all kinds of things going on in the jungle, and you gotta be aware when you are in the lowland jungle. I mean, you gotta be careful. I was sick with some jungle diseases throughout the years that are no fun, that can kill you, like malaria or chikungunya virus that brought me to the edge as well. The jungle is a living entity and it's about life and death, and you are in it. So there's a risk traveling to the lowland jungle and getting sick with something, definitely, or getting like bitten or stung or whatever. You need to be careful, as much as you can. This is one thing. The other thing, when it comes to the context, because I'm alone, I'm kind of, how can I say, positioning myself in a specific energy. Like, I'm oftentimes observing, and I respect the rules of the village that I'm in. I'm more in the background first when I'm arriving for the first time, when I don't know the people, right? It's important that, I mean, I'm not showing off with a big fat camera and technology or equipment, because it's altering them. You just gotta be careful. Like I'm also not like leaving my credit card laying around somewhere. Of course not. I mean, there's some common sense when you travel to these places, that you take care of yourself and stay safe. What I'm always trying is understand the language and learn the language and speak the language. The language is important, an important bridge that overcomes xenophobia. Because still I'm white, and the current situation as it is here in South America, with already indigenous people in Brazil being sick with the coronavirus, and the old indigenous trauma getting activated by the white people bringing the diseases like it was with measles and smallpox, is very current. It's there, it's real, and a lot of indigenous people and villages have put themselves in self-quarantine right now. So they locked down their villages, no visitors are allowed. So I don't know how the future around that will develop. So we got to see. But there is I heard of a lot of aggression in some jungle cities here in Peru towards white people. So I don't know how my future with traveling to the jungle and the indigenous will change upon this current situation, or when will it come back to its normality. I was always careful, and I never felt threatened. The only thing that happened is maybe that an indigenous person is interested in you as a love partner or wanting to marry you. This is what I've experienced, which can happen, right? It's normal. This is the only thing I've ever experienced, but other than that, I never had problems. It is actually, for some very modern tribes, it's not that big deal if people come visit them. It's not a big deal if you have someone who's arranging a trip like this to get there. It's actually for the westernized tribes who are used to working with white people, it's not a big deal. If it's more like a remote thing that you want to do on your own, like I usually do, you gotta have a specific mindset for that. But there's a lot of shamanic healing centers all over the Amazon that are arranging all your trip, from airport to hotel to jungle and back, So people who book like healing retreats in the Amazon rainforest usually never have a problem with getting there and getting back, because they are taken care of.